Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this town hall, the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. What do we call this? Open house? Larimer County Commissioners Open House in our new, beautiful Loveland facility. Yeah, exciting, huh? Yeah.
And didn't you win some kind of an award?
We actually did just win an Engineering News Record award for the, what was it, Linda? The best
Best local building.
public building or something, and so it's we're really proud of it, and we'll talk. Hopefully, I'll have a chance to talk about it a little bit more later on in the meeting. I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners this year. Commissioner Kafalis is en route to this meeting. We run around a lot, and so he's not quite here yet. And Commissioner Johnson is actually out of town doing some family stuff today, and so for a few minutes, you're going to have me and some other guests as well. We have a number of things in the back, items in the back that are available to you. Things like our community report, which is kind of a report card of how county government's operating in the past year. We have Office on Aging guides. We have, I think, maybe some Workforce Center flyers. And then we have this little card. It says Connect with Larimer County. And you can sign up, give us your name and your email address. And we are going to put, if you choose to do so, we're going to put you on our email distribution list, and we send out, what do we send out, Michelle? One email a month? One email a month, and that tells you all about what's going on in the county. It's kind of similar to if you live inside a municipality, you get your utility bill, and it always has information about what's going on in your community. We don't have a utility, and so this is a way for us to communicate with you. And if you do sign up tonight, we're going to do a drawing for a major, don't tell them what the major prize is, for a major prize at the break at 7 o'clock. And so we're going to take a break at 7. You can have a chance to sign up, and one lucky winner will get a major prize at that time. I'm serious. It's a big deal. There's also coffee. There's some pastries or something back there, and we don't want to cart it back, so make sure you take it. And just the one other thing, I want to thank the folks from the city of Fort Collins who are here with us tonight. Yay, Fort Collins. Yay. The Choice City. They're actually broadcasting this on, what are we broadcasting it on? YouTube channel. The Larimer County YouTube channel. So if anybody here is in the Witness Protection Program and they don't want their face to be out there, be cognizant of the fact that we're broadcasting this. Before I go any further, I was going to take a minute and introduce our county manager, Linda Hoffman. She's here with us. Hi, Linda. And our assistant county manager, Lorinda Volker. Michelle Bird, our public affairs manager at the county, set this meeting up for us, so thanks a lot, Michelle, for what you do. And we have a number of elected officials and representatives of elected officials, so I'm going to give them just an opportunity to address you real briefly. I guess maybe you don't, Rob, you're so new you probably don't want to talk about anything. Good. Well, that's Rob Malloy. He's a newly elected member of the Loveland City Council. So congratulations or condolences, whichever is most appropriate, and thanks for your service. As a Loveland resident myself, I appreciate your willingness to serve. And Rob and I actually, long ago, like 15 years ago maybe, served on the Loveland Planning Commission together. So a long time. We've known each other a long time. So congratulations, Rob, and welcome to the game. Yeah, good. Dan Betts is here from U.S. Senator Cory Gardner's office. And Dan, did you have a little bit of an update you want to give us?
Yeah.
There's something kind of cool that you were working on.
Yeah, so so there's this former astronaut, Vance Brand, who grew up in Longmont. And the airport there is named after him. He actually has a moon rock that he donated to the Longmont Museum. Wow. Kind of a famous local guy. Now lives in California. But he is donating 40 acres of land adjacent to Rocky Mountain National Park to the park. Awesome. But as Commissioner Donnelly described it, you can't just give land to the park. It takes an act of Congress to make them take it.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of doing that right now. And so I visited the county commissioners a week and a half or so ago, and they were nice enough to provide a support letter that will accompany our legislative efforts along with several other stakeholders. And so it's just kind of a cool little thing we're doing here where we'll be able to add that land to the park and and it'll be just a nice benefit for the American people. I do have one other update I thought about. So the Land and Water Conservation Fund is a fund that's used to purchase land, willing buyer, willing seller, usually for open lands and parks and that sort of thing. Recently, Senator Gardner helped spearhead an effort to permanently authorize the program so he doesn't have to continually be reauthorized on an annual basis.
Good work.
Now we're going through the process of permanently funding the program. It actually doesn't come out of the Treasury. It actually comes from offshore oil royalties or oil tax receipts. And so it's already funded. There's a source for the funding, but we have to go through the legal process. And so we're trying to permanently fund it. It just passed the first committee on Tuesday, and so we're very excited about that. Larimer has benefited from this program after the flood and fires that we've had not in the not so recent past. So we're excited about that. So
very good. Thanks for joining us, Dan. And so Vance Brand is kind of a local legend. He was a famous astronaut. He, I think, was the captain of the first joint space flight between Soviet cosmonauts and American astronauts in whatever year that occurred in the 1970s, right? And so he's kind of a notable guy and very humble. He was a naval aviator. He was obviously in the space program. He was an astronaut for many decades. And in the letter that he sent to the senator, he said that he would like to donate this land because he wanted to give something back to the American people. And isn't that amazing? Because I mean, that's a guy who's given basically his entire career to the American people. I mean, at great risk to his personal safety. And so he's really quite a guy. And really, I mean, if you were a kid growing up like me in the 70s, like astronaut was like the gold standard of things that you could do when when you grew up. And so he lives it. I mean, he's very elderly now, but still obviously very committed and passionate about service. So it's really cool that you're working on that, Dan. We really appreciate it. And obviously the goal of that or the idea behind that is we don't want the federal government selling our public lands, right? We don't want them to be given away or traded or anything like that. And so to add or subtract from the public lands takes an act of Congress. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think of it that way, but of course it's incredibly difficult to get something like that passed. Hi, John.
Hello, Tom.
Welcome. Come on up. Commissioner Cavallis is here. Welcome, Commissioner. And I just saw Miles Baker, who's a member of the Windsortown Board, who's here and serves on the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization with me. So welcome, Miles. A couple other elected officials have joined us. Hi, Karen. And they were going to give some updates that would be particularly pertinent, especially here in Loveland. And the first is our county clerk, Angela Myers. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much.
Hi.
I appreciate having the opportunity to speak at this event, and wow, I'm delighted to see so many people in the room. Sometimes these events are not all that well participated in. No,
When it's just
nobody
me,
even
it's
knew I
empty.
was coming. But anyway, I'm Angela Myers, your Larimer County Clerk and Recorder, and I thought perhaps some folks in the room might like to know or ask me any questions about the recount that's impending in Loveland.
Mm-hmm.
Today we completed, my office of course is responsible for elections administration for the county. In our coordinated election for 2019, we had of course several questions for Loveland. One was the Ward 2 race, and it is within 2 votes.
Thanks, ma'am.
And it's so close that it requires a recount. I was not able to call for that recount until today because today we had canvass, which effectively puts our election in the history books, so makes it official, and that's the point at which a mandatory recount is officially called for. And I did that before heading this way today. That recount will, the processes associated with that will take place December 4th, 5th, and 6th. And want to know if anybody's got any questions. If you do happen to have questions about elections generally, I'm happy to answer any questions generally about elections. Anybody? Yeah.
So with that process, is the election
with that process, do you use some of the election judges from the election, or are there specially trained election judges and personnel that you have trained and ready to go for like a recall?
It's a great question. And the folks who actually conduct elections on all fronts really are folks just like you. So I hope, I'm actually glad you said this because it gives me a chance to plug. Any of you would consider being election judges, please do. I have a staff of 14. And we have 240,000 registered voters in Lamar County. So my folks, it's impossible for them to actually conduct the election. It is actually conducted by citizen judges just like yourselves. My staff is there to make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, right? We conduct the orchestra, but you, as citizens, conduct it, actually do the work of the election. And we will have election judges doing this work of the recount, absolutely. And in Larimer County, somewhat uniquely, we do everything in bipartisan teams. So at every juncture of the process in Larimer County, we do it in a bipartisan team, yes. About 40.
Hold on.
His question was, what is the county turnout percentage? And that we're just over 47%. Yeah, it's pretty good.
For this local.
For this election.
For the off-year election.
For 2019 coordinated. That's a very nice turnout. Coordinated elections, historically, 2013 was the next highest at 48% and some change. 2011 was 51% and some change, but generally we would have expected 30s, 35% range for this election.
Hold on, Jeff.
Hi, Angela. Just a little more detail on the percentage turnout. Do you have it by community and county?
No.
Okay. Will that be available at some point?
The statement of votes cast, I think, has something per race or per ballot style for percentage of turnout. We don't, in a coordinated election, we do not report by precinct. We report by ballot style. So I'll be happy to look into it for you, Jeff.
But in general election years, even number election years, you do provide precinct by precinct data for elections. She's
Correct.
required to do so.
Correct.
Any other questions for County Clerk?
I want to remind every single voter across Larimer County, every vote matters. And I always say that no matter, recounts, none of us is excited to get a recount, right? When we begin an election, those of us in the elections field, our thing that we say is pray for wide margins, right? And so, but, silver lining in everything. And that silver lining is every single person in Larimer County is now reminded that every single vote matters. And so I hope that makes a difference and gets people out there to really exercise the value in their vote. And, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
So thank you, folks, for your time.
Very good. Thanks. And our county treasurer, Irene Josie, is here with us. She's going to give a brief update as well. Hi, Irene.
Hi, thank you, Commissioner Donnelly. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to talk a little bit about the office and what we just went through. November 14th was our annual tax lien sale, and what happens at that if property owners are neglectful and don't pay their property taxes, in order for the school districts, fire districts, special districts, and the county to obtain their full budget by state law, those properties are taken to what's called tax lien sale. We held that at the ranch on last Thursday. We had 849 properties that were delinquent. We were able to have 249 actually as well, 249 investors invested in those properties. Those properties are not lost by the property owner. A lien is placed on that property. When they pay those taxes, they have 3 years to redeem. We brought those taxing authorities that I mentioned, all of the ones in Larimer County, $2.115 million that day, and it will be distributed on the 10th of December. Of that figure, 73,725 was premium bid, and what that is above what's owed for people, investors who want a little bit of a larger return on a larger property. they pay a premium bid and don't get interest on that. It's a little convoluted to those who don't know a lot about the process. We do have a very, very active and informative website. I encourage you to go out on the website and check it out if you have any questions. We have a chat option. We're addressing a couple of improvements at the beginning of the year. We hope to add a drop box, a 24-hour drop box. We do answer our phones. We don't use voicemail during the day. We are very oriented to customer service and want to be available for any questions you may have. Again, my name is Irene Josie. I'm your Larimer County Treasurer, and hope that you come by and see us, call us. If you have any questions about your tax statement that you'll get in January, please feel free to call. I expect some changes with that, some increases. So if you have any questions about property taxes, I'll be glad to answer those while I'm here tonight.
Does anyone have any questions about our treasury? It's I know that it's one thing that most people never even think about and don't realize, but the county treasurer is actually charged with collecting all the property tax revenue in Larimer County, and about half of that money goes to your local school districts. So she collects the money that's used to fund your local schools. Only about 25% of your property tax actually comes to the county. I mean, if you pay it to the county, but we only keep about 25%, and the rest goes out. Like I said, about half goes to your school districts. If you live inside of city limits, you pay a certain mill levy to your city. If you have a fire district, a library district, all those different local government entities, they all take a cut. And so Irene has to collect that money for them, and then she has to distribute it all. And so it's very complicated. And she also manages all the investments. Obviously, we try not to, we have huge sums of money that we've stockpiled to last throughout the year, so we can pay people salaries and things like that throughout the year. And Irene manages all those investments for us. So it's a very big job. You do it with a really tiny staff too. I think only about 10 or 11 people.
13, including me. We had 14 when I started in the office in 1986. We had 14 staff members, including the treasurer at the time, who was Chuck Woodward. And now we have 13. We've been able to take advantage of technology and hiring and retaining the right people.
But during that same amount of time, the number of properties is probably, I don't know how much has increased. I think there's almost 150,000 parcels that are taxable in the county. And so a staff of 13 people collects, figures out the individual bills for every one of those properties, sends them out, collects all the money, and then, like she talked about just a moment ago, if in the event that there's some that don't pay, then she has to go out and figure out how to collect that as well. And so that's what they've just done. And so, when the school bus rolls on Monday, it'll be because Irene collected the back property taxes to make sure they could. And so, great work.
Thank you.
Very good.
Did you have a question?
And there's one other thing.
Yes.
For years and years, for decades, in the Big 10 counties here in Larimer County, of which we are one, the Front Range counties, the public trustee function has been a political appointee of the governor. So whenever a new governor was elected, he got to put a person into role as the public trustee in the Big 10 counties. And so what the public trustee does is, in the event someone doesn't pay their mortgage and their home is foreclosed, the public trustee is charged with selling that property. Governor Polis signed legislation which was passed this last year to do away with that political appointed position and give that responsibility to the county treasurer. So not only do you collect all these taxes and do all this other work, now you're going to actually handle the public trustee function as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, starting next year.
Correct, on
Yeah.
July 1st.
Yeah, so pretty interesting work. Oh, let me get, who has a question?
Bill.
Oh, of course, the guy in the back. Why don't you sit in the front if you're going to ask questions?
So in this very sucky interest-earning environment, what kind of instruments do you choose, and are there state or federal criteria
Regulation, yeah.
that say you can only do X and Y?
Correct. That's absolutely right, Bill. The first priority is safety for public funds. There is a public funds investment policy that is set out by state statute. We can only go out up to 5 years. Right now, my average rate of maturity is a little bit low. It's right under 2 years. We are getting about 1.69 on liquid investments. We have just right under $200 million in liquid investments, and what those do is every night we have a zero balance account. Everything is flushed and working in an interest-bearing account every night. It's a sweep account. And right at that, liquid investments are right under 200 million, and our long-term treasuries, mostly, I cherish security and safety, so I do not invest in some of the things by law that we're allowed to invest in, such as AAA commercial paper and different things like that. I choose not to do that. I don't think that chasing returns is a wise thing to do for public funds. So we're right under 200 million for those as well, probably closer to 280 for those long-term investments.
So I think what you're saying is that you invest whatever you've got.
180,
everything,
sorry, 180.
everything is invested.
Yes,
all
every
the-
night.
I mean, every night. Money, even our liquid cash for the
Yes.
county, she invested at night. And if you think about the amount of money, that's a big deal. That makes a lot of difference, over time, right? And so that's prudent, and I think really, really awesome that you do that.
Thank you. We call them ZBA, zero balance accounts. And every morning, we know what our requirements are to meet the bills of the county. We wire that money in, and anything that comes in through federal funding, state funding, or property tax collection, any way it comes in to the county, that hits up against our what's due, and what's left, we zero it out into an investment pool.
Very good. Any other questions for Irene? Yeah, Marta?
Yes.
Here. Yeah. Can you learn something here? Is there a lesson here? Look at this.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
You're a star pupil.
I'm curious, what kind of uptick has there been in real estate tax defaults?
This year, let's see. 4 years ago, 6 years ago, I apologize. 6 years ago, we had over 3,000 properties that we took to tax lien sale. This year, we had 849. So we've noticed a slight decline this year, but I'm also noticing, and it hits the real estate market on our side a little bit slowly compared to what the market is doing out there. So 2 months ago, we were getting about 1.8% on our liquid investments. Now it's closer to 1.63, 1.69, depending on how far we're going out. So we're noticing decline in interest rates and a decline in delinquencies, but I also feel that that's temporary.
Yeah.
So.
It kind of mirrors the economic cycle, and so the economy is good right now, and so I think people are paying their mortgages.
And when the decline in the market starts to occur, or in the economy, we're a little bit slower to see that on our end. Usually about 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
Very good. Any
Thank
other
you very
questions
much.
for the
Thank
treasurer?
you.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You and Angela are really nerds, but I'm really glad that you do this work because it's important and it's difficult.
I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So thanks a lot for coming in. Commissioner Kafalis, welcome. Good to see you, man. How was the traffic?
Not good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Larimer 1A failed, so it's not looking up for your commute, Commissioner. I think I've recognized all the elected officials here with us today. We're going to take a little bit of time, I think, to talk about some issues that might be on our minds, and then we're going to open this up for, to interact with folks who might have questions. Michelle has asked me to have you come up to this microphone. We'll see if that works, and we'll try that, right? Than having me run around to Bill Becker 5 times. Well, Bill mistakenly thought he was at church, and so he sat in the back because he's used to that, right? There's no collection plate here, Bill. You'll be fine. So, John, would you like to start?
Sure.
I'll sit down.
So, thank you all very much for being here. My name is John Kafalis. I hope you'll accept my apologies for being late. I was coming down the interstate. I'm sure we're all familiar with the interstate, I-25, and everything was going well, but then as I got closer to Harmony Road, everything stopped, and I'm hoping something must have occurred, but I came off the interstate and basically took the county roads to get here. So I apologize for being late. I'm very happy to be here. I wanted to just mention a number of things that that we can get into more if folks are interested. But there are a number of things that the county is engaged in, and I'll touch on those. And then I'd like to focus a little bit more on our strategic plan, our 5-year goals, and in particular, the goals related to affordable housing and childcare. But overall, I think, number one, we're we're about a month away. We're about a month away from adopting the 2020 Larimer County budget. And I hope that some of you picked up the budget brief, the 2020 budget brief, proposed budget, and we'll update that once we adopt the final budget. But that's December 20th, we are going to adopt that budget. We've had public hearings, we've had input, we've made some adjustments, but that's something that's really, really important. The overall operating budget is about $289 million operating budget, general fund dollars. And Commissioner Donnelly, Tom, did talk about how one source, a big source of revenue is mill levy, but it's only 25% of the overall mill levy that is collected in the county. So we have the budget that we're going to approve, $289 million approximately. And if you add on the capital improvement aspects of the budget, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $575 million. County Manager Hoffman. She's always here to make sure I'm telling you good info. Well, yeah, I don't want to, and again, if folks have...
They have the budget brief.
Yeah, and I just wanted you to be aware that this is one of the things that's very important, and because it basically, you know, the various departments that we have oversight over, this is how those departments function, whether it's health and environment, whether it's human services, whether it's public safety, et cetera. Did you want to, was I not correct in that 575? Let me pull out my budget brief, huh?
The 575 is right, but that includes not only the operating budget and the capital, it also includes disaster recovery, and then what we call non-operational accounts, which are basically transfers between accounts or money that lays around in accounts like we're self-funded for health care, so we have to have a big pot of money laying around that shows like it's going to be spent each year, but it's actually kind of replenished each year. So all of that together is the big number.
Yes. And what I'd like to leave you with, and it's certainly if you have more detailed questions, we can do our best to answer those, is that, you know, we want to make this process as transparent and accountable as possible. And so if you have suggestions next year, as we begin the process of working on the 2021 budget, we would welcome those suggestions. Because, for example, a few weeks ago, we had 2 public hearings. One of them was in Fort Collins at the courthouse up on West Oak Street. We also had another public hearing up in Estes Park. The turnout was not great, and we did our best to advertise that, but we would welcome your suggestions on how we can make this process more user-friendly and more available and easier for folks to engage. A second thing that I would like to mention, and I bet we'll hear a couple of questions about that, is you know that we are in the process of accepting comments on our proposed oil and gas regulations. And I imagine we'll have some discussion about that, and people will have some input there. But I think you're aware, if you've been following the process, I hope this is okay, Commissioner Donnelly, just a couple of updates here. The task force did its work at the end of October. There were some draft regulations that are made available to the public, and it's really, as I see it, it's an outline. And so we're now accepting input from folks to see how the next iteration of the draft regulations on oil and gas can be more focused, and we can make some changes to that. So that's obviously another thing that's really important. The timeline for that is that I think December 2nd or something there's sort of a formal input period, and there's a form on. If you go to the website, you'll see that there's a way to make public input, public comments, and also you can email the planners that have been involved in this. some of our community planners. So that's another thing that is really important. And the last thing I'll mention, then I'd like to just touch a little bit on the strategic plan, and that is the land use code. So you all know that we adopted the comprehensive. Were you going to talk about that?
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
Take as much time as you need.
No,
I'm moving over here to my
yeah,
car.
why don't you get comfortable?
I will. It's going to take a while. I will.
No, I don't mean to, because I want to give you folks more time to ask questions. But the land use code is obviously it's very important. What we're operating under, the previous master plan was 1997. We updated that after a 2 or 3 year process. A lot of community engagement. The Planning Commission, of course, was involved. But ultimately, we adopted a new comprehensive plan in July. And that is informing how the next 1.5 year, 2 year process for updating the land use code. Currently, we have consultants. They have put together a draft document assessment of the first phase of this updating of the land use code, what aspects of the land use code we need to change, and what aspects of the land use code perhaps should remain intact. And again, the land use code is so important because that's what gives us, quote, regulatory authority. Those are kind of the laws that the county operates under, and it basically dictates and provides a framework for what people can do with their property, with their land. So that's really important. So let me just say, you've all seen this document, I think, the strategic plan. We did this once before, prior to my time, and it's to the credit of the commissioners that they determined it was important, based on community input, to look at goals and overarching goals, and then specific measurable objectives. 5-year goals, sort of like stretch goals that are intended to align with our 20-year comprehensive plan goals. And so for example, with the previous 5-year strategic plan, one of the goals had to do with addressing the needs regarding behavioral health. And as you know, we made various valiant efforts to go to the voters and ask for resources, public money, public resources, to be able to address some of our very serious behavioral health issues, mental health, addiction issues, and so forth. And the first time around in 2016, we were not successful. Of course, we were successful in 2018. So that's an example of a goal that was included in the previous 5-year strategic plan, which basically went from, I think, 2013 to 2018. And so now we are looking at the current strategic plan, which we adopted, back in the springtime. We have various, quote, objective teams, and they're working on work plans. And so, for example, there are 3 goals: infrastructure, economic opportunity, and services. How do we provide services as the county changes, as the population changes, and those kinds of things? Within each of those goals are specific objectives. The ones that I have some responsibility for fall under the economic opportunity, quality of life goal. And in particular, housing, childcare, workforce development. How do we help people with disabilities, to have more opportunity for meaningful employment, certainly internally with the county and certainly in the community. And then, of course, the fourth objective within that goal has to do with community well-being and resiliency and community health. So on the matter of housing, I keep saying very quickly, but I'm not doing a very good job. Are you guys still with me? Yeah. I'll wrap it up. So, and a lot of this is based on community input. A lot of it is based on what some of our values and priorities are as commissioners. But I know every 2 years we do a community survey, and we'll be doing another community survey in next year, 2020. And so there's another opportunity for folks to engage. If you have suggestions on topics or questions we should be asking in this community survey that could provide us with input on, how do we want to continue to see the county going forward, that would be another opportunity to engage. But based on previous community surveys, based on what we've heard time and time again, whether you live in Berthoud, whether you live in Wellington, whatever, the lack of affordable housing, the high cost of childcare, what are oftentimes referred to as child care deserts. Those are really important issues. So that helped inform establishing these objectives. On the housing front, let me just frame I keep saying that term very quickly, the problem, because it's important to understand what the problem is, and it's very complex. But for example, to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Larimer County, based on, we've put together an infographic based on the research that we've done and some of the analysis that we've done. And I don't have many of these, but they are available. I'm happy to send them to you, but it's a very good tool. But based on this information, it shows that the rental wage, in other words, the amount of money you would have to make to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, and by 2-bedroom apartment in Larimer County, we're talking about $1,300 a month. Of course, in Fort Collins, depending on what part of town, that varies quite a bit. But in order to not pay more than 30% of your adjusted gross income for housing, you ready for this one? Maybe by a show of hands, who's making this? No, I'm just kidding. You need to make about $24 an hour. $24 an hour. And we know that with rental households, quite a high percentage of them, 35% of the households in Larimer County are renter households, and 65% are folks who are homeowners. But we know that many of those renter households, more than a majority, are what we call cost burdened. In other words, they're paying more than 30% of their AGI, their adjusted gross income, towards housing. On the home ownership side, based on some of this analysis, if you consider that the average price of a single-family home, and I believe this is Fort Collins, this is going this previous September, is $442,000 approximately. The average sales price for a townhouse condo, again in Fort Collins, September 2019, is on the order of, rounded off, $304,000. If you consider those kinds of prices, it would take a household of 4 about $92,000 a year, earning $92,000 a year, in order to not pay more than 30% of your income, and that's principal, interest, more, all of those kinds of things, homeowners insurance. So clearly we have an issue there. With child care, the same kind of issues apply, especially infant and toddler care. There are serious gaps, the cost is fairly astronomical. So we've identified those issues, and there's more detail, and I'm happy to share this infographic with you. So you may want to ask, well, what are we going to do about it, right? What do you think we should do about it? What do you think we should do about it? Do you have thoughts on that, sir?
I know it's expensive. I know it's expensive to live here.
It is absolutely expensive.
You're preaching to the choir.
It's the only good thing about being old is that we lived here a long time, bought houses a long time ago.
Well, and I guess, let me just offer a couple of ideas that we're considering. And I would submit to you that if you're really interested in this stuff, and I know some of you are for all sorts of reasons, and on Monday, the Monday before Thanksgiving, is it Monday or Wednesday, when we're going to have a work session, we'll have a work session with the commissioners where we'll receive an update on the affordable housing work plan. But some of the things that we're considering, and we've adjusted this in the last number of months, in terms of what role does the county have in this affordable housing conundrum. But one of the things we're considering is creating an in-house a program for Larimer County employees to help with homeowners, homeownership assistance, first-time homeowners. We're also looking at revitalizing the Larimer County Housing Authority. Turns out that back in 1981, we had established a Larimer County Housing Authority, which really didn't do much, and which a number of years later, the Fort Collins Housing Authority, or Housing Catalyst, basically took over the administration of that. And the primary goal of the Larimer County Housing Authority was to administer housing vouchers, targeted housing vouchers that we're in particular trying to help address some of the child welfare issues. So we're looking at revitalizing that and establishing intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs, with the various housing authorities, Estes Park, Loveland, Fort Collins, Wellington, et cetera. We've been having conversations, and there's still plenty of work to be done. But our intention is not to duplicate the good work that is being done out there, but to somehow, with the county, leverage some of the resources that might be out there. We're also looking at land banking, land trusts, and also figuring out what the county can do with regard to one of the components of housing that is unsubsidized housing that is at risk for a lot of reasons, and that is manufactured housing or mobile home parks. So there are a number of things that we're considering on the housing front, and I'm happy to answer any more questions about that. On the child care front, we're kind of scaling back a little bit, but basically we want to continue to work with the Early Childhood Council of Larimer County. We also want to, I'll just say one thing on this, and then I'll actually be done. Aren't you glad? At least for now. And that is, one of the things that we've noticed is that in-home care, licensed in-home care, and then what's referred to as sort of the informal care that's out there, friends, family, those kinds of networks. We've seen a 78% reduction in in-home care. And in particular, this impacts those of us who have infants and toddlers. And it can be very expensive, and the lack of access, the lack of quality, we're losing that. So we are going to do an analysis, for example, on child care and housing to try to better understand, a qualitative analysis to better understand what's happening there, and that will inform future actions. But in the end, we want to be appropriate players in the housing arena, in the child care arena, and because ultimately that connects with so many other things that are important to all of us, whether if we don't have children, or maybe if we moved here like we did 43 years ago, and we bought a house in Old Town, which was a lot cheaper back then, but had we not bought it back then, we would not be able to live in Old Town, Fort Collins. Yes, what's your name?
Olivia.
Oh, yes, hi,
Hold on, I
Olivia.
have to give you the microphone. I was hedging my bets that Bill would ask the next question.
And actually, that's all I have to say. I'm happy to entertain questions, but I certainly want to give Commissioner Donnelly an opportunity to share his wisdom.
No problem. We'll do that in a little bit.
Yes,
Plenty of time.
What role does the county play in bringing in businesses, corporations that actually pay a living wage, and educating our residents so that they can get those jobs, whether it's through the trades, BOCC type schools. But if the people are already here, providing housing is great, but what they really need is a job to maintain that housing, right?
Absolutely.
And an education to get the job to maintain that housing.
And so the underlying question here, thank you, Olivia. That's a very nice name. The underlying question is, as I understand it, is what role does the county have in addressing some of these workforce issues, some of these employer retention issues, and bringing in employers that that would ultimately provide what we call primary jobs. Many of the jobs, much of the job growth. In fact, if I may, I will answer your question. When I talked about the rental wage as being $24 to afford a rental, on this infographic we show various occupations, and it turns out the occupations that make that amount of money or above include, I'm glad I have my glasses, software developer, a general and operations managers, and registered nurses.
County commissioners.
And county commissioners.
Good work if you can get it, yeah.
Yes, That is absolutely correct.
Right.
But to get back to your question, I would submit that the role for the county, the county does have an important role, and we're actually exercising that role. And Tom and others can get into it more. But for example, we have the Economic and Workforce Development Center, and we are doing a lot of good work to help with training. We are doing a lot of good work to work with the various chambers of commerce. There's something called Talent 2.0 Regional Workforce Strategy. Over the next 5 years, we see quite a number of jobs growing, but the skill sets are not there. And so we are working with the private sector, and it's actually a regional approach to look at how do we properly train people, to look at how do we attract some of those folks, and how do we make sure that people that are coming out of our high schools and colleges are getting those jobs. So primary jobs are those that pay higher wages. Secondary jobs tend to be service jobs. And they're all important, and they all have value, but ultimately, what can we do to address this? But the last thing I'll say is one of the biggest barriers for folks to be able to work here and in those kinds of jobs, because we have good job growth and we have companies and there's a lot of good synergy, I think, that is happening, are these things like childcare and housing. I mean, I know people that are paying $16,000 a year for childcare. 92% of the folks who live in Wellington, 92% of the folks who live in Wellington, guess what? They commute out of Wellington. It's more affordable to live in Wellington. It's more affordable to live in, Eaton or places like that. And so 92% of the people are commuting. And that has impacts, of course, on our transportation infrastructure and those kinds of things. So all of these issues, in my view, are connected, and I think there's agreement, but the county definitely has an important role, and I would say we're exercising that, but we can always do better. Sir. Oh, Jeff.
John, you brought up the land use code rewrite, and that assessment we will see in our Larimer County Planning Commission, I believe, on December 4th.
Is that right?
Is that right, Matt? Matt Lafferty, our long-term planner at Larimer County. So we see that first assessment in the work session on December 4th at 5:30 for those of you that are interested.
Thank you, sir. And that's important because, again, the land use code is critical. And I didn't get into this, but that's another piece of the puzzle that the county is considering as far as helping to address the affordable housing conundrum. So what can we do to incentivize certain types of housing? For example, this whole idea of accessory dwelling units, ADUs. What can we do to make sense logically to add more ADUs, to consider whether rent could be charged? What is the role of tiny homes, for example, with regard to these kinds of things? Windsor is doing some actually we have one of the town trustees here, but Windsor has actually done some really good work around updating their code, I think, regarding ADUs. But that's another aspect of the land use code. We can incentivize certain kinds of things, to basically make things happen around housing. And housing and childcare and transportation costs are some of the biggest barriers that we have with getting the workforce that we need, to kind of have a vibrant place. Yes. Oh.
I'll be listening to everything you said later on anyway.
What was that?
That's good. Miles.
Yeah, thank you. I have regarding affordable housing.
Would you identify yourself, sir?
Miles Baker, Windsor Town Board, Larimer resident.
Hey, Bruce.
I have a question about affordable housing. And I think the cities and towns are really on the front lines of this. And we've got an affordable housing project for senior living. And the Loveland Housing Authority partners with Windsor Housing. And they've requested $650,000 in fee waivers. That's a huge amount of money for a town like Windsor. So I was hoping maybe the county could set up some sort of grant program to assist the cities and towns in these fee waivers where we're trying to help the affordable housing, but for a smaller town like Timnath, Windsor, or Wellington, that's a lot of money.
Well, I appreciate that, Miles. And I would say to you, and again, Tom, I want to give Tom a chance here, but...
Go ahead. I'm not going to have time. We're going to take a break at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to let you just roll up to 7. And
are you guys okay with me just carrying on?
Yeah, keep going, John. That's fine. You got a couple more questions.
Usually it's reversed. I'm usually...
Yeah, I know.
I'm exercising my Tom Donnelly here. No.
You spent too much time together. We spent entirely too much time together, John.
Sorry.
I think Rob had a
love that
question.
guy. But I think in response to your question, and then certainly, there have been, more recently perhaps, various informal asks about, how does the county put skin in the game, money, and we're certainly putting money in as far as some of these analyses that we're talking about that I think will help inform a lot of stuff. We are putting money in the game there. But the 2020 budget is almost set, and what I would encourage people in an informed way is if there is a role, if the county can do it, to look at putting, creating a grant program or a loan program, we should be having those conversations next year. One of the things that I learned, for example, when we did a visit to Berthoud, anybody here from Berthoud? Oh, of course. Oh, hi, Karen. Hello, Karen. So, for example, and it gets back to our planning and our land use code and things like that. So Berthoud actually has this really unique, I don't know if we can work with the municipality, but they have a tiered rate structure around water fees. Water, even before you put a shovel in the ground, right? Tom, help me. The price of a house, because water shares, tap fees, all of that is so darn astronomical. For a single family home that's maybe 3,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet, the cost is already 40 grand or something like that. So Berthoud has come up, their town board came up with this tiered rating structure, and basically they've been able, and there's some subsidy involved, I think, there, because it's, to make it sustainable, but they've been able to shave off, they have homes for sale, very nice single-family homes, smaller square footage homes, thank you, Mission Homes. Check out Mission Homes, Colorado or something, .org or .com. But they are able to build really, really nice homes, 900 square foot homes, and we're not talking about tiny homes. These are really nice homes, great landscaping, less water use, more energy efficient for like 250 grand up to 300. And they're shaving off $10,000 per house because they have this tiered water fee structure. Now, whether we can replicate that or scale that up, that's what this whole process is about. Yes, sir, you have the microphone.
Yeah, Rob Malloy. I'm newly elected city council, Loveland.
Oh my! Congratulations, I think.
So I'm still young on the council and make up some crazy ideas that never work. But
I get that a lot with my fellow commissioners. Yep. I'm a kid.
But as far as property taxes go, my personal thoughts on property taxes, we're some of the lowest anywhere. As far as I've got 5 siblings living across the country, and some of them are paying 4 times what we pay, and their house value is half of what my house value is. So obviously with that, I think that it raises the value of the house as more people want to move here, obviously low taxes. Well, my question is, when I first moved here in '92, my house was $52,000 when I bought it. But they had these programs, the interest rates were 8%, 8 to 10%. But they had these programs where they lowered interest rate to 6%. You could get a 6% if you qualified, first-time home buyers. Of course, that's not possible now with the low percentage, low interest rate right now. But my question is there an opportunity for, because these rents are so high, and I've got kids that are renting apartments, $13,000 to $17,000 a month. What's the opportunity of lowering or giving an incentive to the property owners, the apartment property owners, by lowering their tax, and if they lower the cost, incorporate it into the cost of rent? So, because typically there's quite a bit of tax on these apartment buildings. So my thought is just, there could be some kind of reduction in that facet to bring these rents down, basically. And I don't know how it works, but I get these ideas.
And your name is Robert Malloy?
Yes.
Well, welcome to the world of elected, whatever it is. Appreciate the question, and I think that, all ideas should be on the table, but when it comes to taxes, there are certain limitations. I guess you're able to lower things. You can't raise things unless the voters approve. And I think you also have to be mindful of, if you're selecting a certain segment and lowering taxes, how does that impact others? I think there are other things that can be done, to help address the rising, the increase in rents. But I appreciate that idea, and I will defer all questions related to property taxes to Commissioner Donnelly.
Great. Lonnie, we're going to give you the last word, and then I'm going to have a couple comments, and then we're going to have a break. So go ahead.
Sir.
Good evening. My name's Darren Barrett. I'm a resident
sorry.
here of Loveland, Colorado. And I apologize if this has come up before, but I'm kind of interested in the mental health center here in Larimer County. I heard that there was a possibility of the Department of Human Services getting a state grant, several $1 million, for mental health services. And then I'm kind of wondering when the new mental health center is going to come online and who's going to run it.
And what is your name, sir?
Darren.
Darren?
Yeah.
Well, certainly you all know that the voters approved an increase to the county sales tax. I think it was 0.25%, and that's generating resources. And I think you're aware that in the first year of the behavior, and this was approved by the voters last November. We were not nearly as successful with referendum 1A this November, and we certainly understand and respect the decision of the voters. But basically that money, the intent was to have resources to build a comprehensive, we call it a behavioral health facility, because we're trying to address the mental health issues that frankly plague many people in our community, from children on up to adults, but also to help address some of the addiction and the substance use disorder issues. So everything, to my knowledge, is on track. We can get into that after Tom speaks, and we have a break, I think. But basically, we've been able to, in the first year, the money started coming in last March. We were able to allocate, I think, $1 million to various organizations around the county. It was really important to us, and I think that was one of the selling points, is that there had to be geographic distribution. It couldn't be just a, quote, Fort Collins thing. And so resources based on applications and based on review criteria have gone out to a variety of places around the county, from Wellington, for example, north of Wellington on I think it's County Road 9, you have Harvest Farms, and they work with folks who are homeless and are dealing with a variety of issues. They received a grant. Up in Estes Park, first responders that are dealing with trauma issues and things related to these, they received a grant. So that was one aspect of it. And it's Darren? Yeah. D-A-R-R-E-N or I-N? I-N. Okay, got it. Okay, reminds me of another Darren way back when. And then, of course, I think there's still a lot of details to be worked out, but there are designs being put in place to build a facility, a behavioral health facility that ideally will be located between Loveland and Fort Collins, a more central location, and that'll provide inpatient care, in a variety of ways, and so I think that what the voters wanted. We're doing our best to comply with that, and we are getting money out to the communities, and we are looking at building this behavioral health facility to help address some of these pretty serious issues. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great questions.
Yes,
quite a
great
wide
questions.
spectrum of issues. So I'm going to talk really briefly. We talked a little bit earlier about the county's budget and about property taxes and some things like that. I just wanted to give a couple updates to the folks here tonight. The commissioners are very concerned about the impact higher property valuations have had on people being able to pay their property taxes, particularly seniors in our community. We know there's a number of people that are living on fixed incomes in Larimer County. In fact, I just learned this figure. It's kind of interesting. By 2025, which is only 6 years from now, 1 out of every 4 people in Larimer County is going to be age 60 or older. Isn't that amazing? We're going to be good-looking older people, but older nonetheless. And so the board's concerned about the burden of values, of course. I jokingly I said earlier that being old, the only good thing about being old was that we bought houses here a long time ago, so they were more affordable. But of course now, with increased valuations, maintaining that and being able to maintain the property tax burden on those homes is always challenging. It can be challenging. We have done a good job, I think, of keeping taxes in check here. In fact, I live in Loveland, just in a shanty, really, but I did. It's true. And I looked at. You can go on the Larimer County website and you can look at your history of your property taxes that you paid. And actually, in 2016, on my home, the taxes were actually $100 less than they were in 2004. So in a whole decade, my taxes had actually declined on my house, even though the value had increased by over 50%. So we've done a good job of kind of maintaining that in the past. I think it's kind of a in that instance it was kind of probably too low, right? I mean, because public schools are the major benefactor of property tax, and so for a whole decade later, and they actually had flat revenue. And Karen served on the school board, I know, years ago, and so she can probably attest to that as well. And so. So the Board of Commissioners as part of our 2020 budget, proposed budget, actually is considering a $3.5 million property tax credit back to taxpayers. We can only offer that on the county's portion of your taxes. We can't offer it on the school districts or the city of Loveland's or anybody else's. We can only offer it on the county's portion, which, as we've talked about a couple times, is about 25% of the total tax bill. And so it's the third time since I've been on this Board of Commissioners that we've done a tax credit back to taxpayers on property taxes. The first two were $2.5 million. We did those in 2018 and 2016 when we saw valuations increase markedly in those two reappraisal years. And so in 2020, we're going to do a third property tax credit. That's going to bring the total that has been rebated back to taxpayers to $8 million over that time. And so we're proud of that. It's not a huge amount of money, but we know in the face of escalating values, it's more important than ever that we only take what we need, we feel like we need, and we not take any more than that. As far as I know, we are the only local government in Larimer County that's ever done that one time, not to mention 3 times. And so we're really proud of that fact. This Board of County Commissioners actually, you're standing in seated, actually, I'm standing in a facility that was actually paid for with cash. This was about a $19 million facility. The Board of County Commissioners, through prudent fiscal management, actually paid for this facility with cash. You can go back, it's kind of comical actually, and look at, how many people here are from Loveland? Anybody here from Loveland? Yeah, we're all from Loveland, me too. And yeah, I've lived here for 25 years in Loveland. We can go back to the 1980s and look at some polling that they did, opinion polling, and the number one need that people would say in South County was that we needed a new Loveland facility, our new Loveland County building. And we've been stuck in that thing over on 6th Street for almost 40 years. It was actually built in the 1960s as the Loveland Public Library, and the county had bought it from the city in the 80s, thought that was a wise investment, and had never figured out a way to really enhance the services that we provide down here. It was really important to me when I got on the Board of County Commissioners as a Loveland resident myself. We all pay the same mill levy, whether you live in North Fort Collins and Old Town John, or if you live in Loveland, where I live. We all pay the same mill levy, and we all ought to have access to the same level of service. And so that was something that was really important to me. And so we were able to construct this building. We know that it's always challenging to bring a tax proposal forward, and so we found a way to pay for it. And we paid cash. We didn't even have to issue any bond debt or a long-term obligation for future boards of county commissioners. It's paid for, it's owned, it's free and clear, it's owned by you. And so we're really proud of that. This Board of Commissioners has done that, has used that strategy a number of times in the past decade to make sure that we could stay on a par with some of our facility needs. The county commissioners actually in 2010, my board at that time, built a new alternative sentencing building. It was about $15 million 10 years ago, and we paid for that facility in cash. And what that did was it gave us an opportunity for lower level offenders to give them an alternate means to pay their debt to society, to serve their sentence that they're sentenced to outside of the county jail, right? So we've got a lot of folks in there who maybe have lower level offenses who can keep their job and they can go in and they can actually stay on in the evenings after work. They can serve their sentence for lower level crimes on weekends. So it really gave us a really another tool in the toolbox to try to deal with folks who might have committed a crime or made a pretty significant mistake outside of jail. And so we did that. We expanded our community corrections facility, which is it's kind of a halfway house for people transitioning out of the state prison system back into society. It's not like in the movies where you get out of prison and they give you back everything you had in your pockets and there's a blonde waiting outside in a convertible. It's not like that in real life. In real life, when you come out of prison, you go to this community corrections facility, which is like a halfway house, and then you try to get a job and you work there and you save up some money so you can get an apartment or whatever when you get out. And so we did a significant expansion of that facility and paid for it with cash as well. And the other reason that's real, I mean, I'm kind of joking about it, but the reason it's so important is if you have some type of behavior that landed you in prison, you don't typically get help with that in prison, right? If you have a long-term substance abuse problem, if you even have it's tough to talk about it, but if you have a kind of a sexual, I don't know what the word for it is. If you have a predilection towards some sort of aberrant and illegal sexual behavior, you're not going to get help for that in prison. And when you come out, you're likely to reoffend, right? And so part of the reason we have this halfway house facility, this community corrections facility, is to make sure those people have some types of tools to try to deal with that if they come out. Because the goal is for people to not reoffend, right? And we have the very best rates for recidivism, as like low recidivism rates in the state of Colorado in our community corrections facility. We're very proud of that. Part of the reason we're able to provide that great service is because we paid for that facility and expanded that facility with cash. County commissioners take that very, very seriously. We do have some pressing issues that are coming forward as far as facilities are concerned that are going to be a big lift, and they're not going to probably be possible to be paid for with cash. And future boards of commissioners will have to deal with that. One is our Justice Center, where the courts are located. The courts actually aren't in the courthouse, which is kind of silly, but we outgrew the ability to have them in the courthouse. They used to be, till about 15 years ago. Now they're across the street in a facility called the Justice Center. We also have some courts here in Loveland for local residents, but we're all pretty good people down here. We don't use them that much, but we still have them. We have the availability. We don't have to use them. And so the commissioners this year had to make a really tough decision. We were actually awarded another judge by the state legislature because we needed it, because the number of cases has increased. And so to accommodate that judge, we had to make a pretty tough decision. We had to move state probation officers out of the Justice Center. And the reason why that's challenging is if you get sentenced to probation, it's a heck of a lot easier to go down an elevator one flight and meet with your probation officer that first time than have to go across town to another office to meet with them. A lot of times people just get lost on the way over. So we prefer to have those probation officers right there in the courts with where they can interact with their clients firsthand and right off the bat. So to accommodate this new courtroom we're going to have this new judge, we actually had to move the state probation department out. And so if we get another judge, probably what will happen is we'll have to move the district attorney out. And so that's a problem, right? And so there probably needs to be an expansion there. Luckily there's some room. What there really isn't right now is funding to do it because it's expensive space to build. I mean, you got to build, courtrooms are expensive, and the associated staffing needs for a judge, they require a lot of office space for each judge, and so that's going to be a heavy lift. Future Board of County Commissioners is going to have to take that on and figure that out. And fortunately for me, it won't be me, but that'll be a significant issue in the future. The other thing I maybe would mention, and you can see a great example of it here, is that we have Consolidated Human Services here. We have our Human Services department here. We also have child protection workers. We also have public health services. We also have a workforce center right here in this building, right? And so if someone needs those services, they usually don't just need one. They usually need If you're on some kind of public assistance program, you're probably also working with our workforce center to try to find employment. You might be involved with the health department to get your kids immunizations. You might need to be working with child protection to make sure your home everything is safe and everything's going okay and you have the support you need for your family. And so having all those services consolidated in one location is a big benefit for those people that need it. And it's actually very preventative, actually long term, as far as dealing with folks who might have some challenges. In Fort Collins, we don't really have that. We've got services in at least 3 different locations, and so a lot of times people have to travel around to deal with that and interact with those services. And for some of those folks, they're transportation impaired, and so it's even more challenging. And so that's going to be a significant need for the county in the future. I just wanted to tell you that that was something that was part of what was the board had hoped to accomplish with this Larimer 1A ballot measure. Ultimately, we were unsuccessful with that, and I can understand that tax. It was a fairly significant tax. It was a pretty significant lift for the community. Those are the types of projects, though, that were really envisioned, and they really were designed to address significant operational problems for not just for the county, but really for the people who live here and take advantage of county services. Pretty happy day for us on North I-25. The State Transportation Commission actually met today and voted to approve an extra Bill will have to correct me if I'm wrong, $250 million for segments 7 and 8, which is this piece between North Fort Collins and South Loveland, and an additional $20 million, I think, for segment 6, which is from Highway 402 South Loveland down to Berthoud. And so
Segment 5,
that's segment 6. Yeah, I bet Becker. This is why you're in the back. This is why we keep you in the back. You're lucky we let you out tonight. Yeah, but Bill's absolutely correct to identify that there's still segment 5, which runs from approximately Berthoud down to Highway 66, 119, the Longmont area. We're going to have a bottleneck there. We've raised the funding. We've got the project moving forward to build a 3rd lane on the interstate. It's going to be a tolled express lane. Aren't you happy about that? I bet you are. I know you are. I'll be happy to talk about it if you want. Anyway, the real significant problem is not going to be that you don't want to pay the toll. The real significant problem is that you're going to neck down to 2 lanes for 6 more miles, and that's going to be a challenge. That work was accomplished because local governments here in northern Colorado actually work together much better than local governments anywhere else in the state, frankly. We were able to put together $55 million in local money for a federal highway that the state is responsible for maintaining. Local governments did that. Yeah, I know, it's unbelievable. That was able we made them an offer they couldn't refuse, basically. We brought so much money to the table, the state had to leapfrog our project above other projects to take advantage of that money. And so that's a great example. I mean, I know we all kind of think governments don't work together and all we ever do is fight. We don't fight, do we, John?
No.
Not very much, not very much. But John and I are buddies. But anyway, the perception is that politicians just fight, we don't get along, we don't do any actual work. This is a tangible example of how we did work together. And I think it's something we can all be really proud of. And so it was a challenge. It's a challenge. And it's not a perfect solution, right? But there's no train. Well, there might be a train, but there's not a train right now. What there is, though, here's the thing. Here's what there is. There is a there's a Bustang bus that's going to be able to use this. It's a tolled lane, right? And the toll will actually fluctuate based on traffic levels. So the idea is to give a predictable trip to Denver. If you're willing to pay for it, you can have a predictable trip to Denver. If you're hold on, I'm talking. You want to run, you can run for office. There's only 4 other people running in this room right now. You might as well jump in. The idea is to provide a predictable trip. So I was joking around with people. I took my kids to the airport yesterday. They're traveling with my sister. God help them. I hope it's all okay, because of her. But anyway, you got the good Donnelly. I'm just going to tell you. Anyway, but if I had needed to have a assured travel time to Denver, this would actually allow me to have that. Now I may have to pay for it, but I can get it. And so this is a pretty exciting project because it's going to have, if you like transit, and I'm guessing you do. The thing you're going to like about that, the thing you're going to like about it, though, is that we're doing center loading ramps. So the bus isn't actually even going to have to pull off of the interstate. It's going to be able to load from the center lane. It's going to
drag us though?
Yeah, I don't. There's no drag.
Staying to Denver, but you can't get home.
Well, you can ride it back.
No,
Anyway,
you can't.
well,
Not after a certain time of night.
well, CDOT would beg to differ with you, but that they operate that thing. But that's the whole. The goal is to have it more an easier ability to use the service and to make the trip more predictable. That's something that the governor cares about a lot, and so he's moved this forward. And so this is a transit project. A tremendous piece of this is really geared towards transit. Now, I mean, you can complain about it, but that's what it really is. But it's good news. We have to get it done, and then we can do whatever comes next. But that's good news, and we're excited. I'm going to keep working to try to get funding for Segment 5 until I leave office. I got about 13 months left. I could have come to this meeting in my pajamas. I'm term limited. I'm never running for office again. And so, but I'm gonna do my very best to make sure that we can try to get funding for that.
How much is that going to cost, Tom? Section 5 about?
As I say, 250 to 300 million. It'll be and there's the good news is we've done a lot of the structures, and we're gonna in this segment 6 they actually are going to do the bridge over the Little Thompson River. So that was all three of the bridges, the Pooter, the Big Thompson, Little Thompson, during the 2013 floods were actually overtopped on the interstate. So it was a pretty dangerous situation. I need to wrap it up, don't I? Okay. So anyway, that's kind of a little update on what's going on. Some things that have happened in the county. I was going to say one other thing. I just need one more minute. And
You tried.
it's easy to. I know I'm channeling Cephalus now. So no, this is kind of sad actually. This is actually a bit of sad news.
Oh,
and so, but I'm going to tell you. You're going to be some of the first people to know in Larimer County actually, and everybody listening on the internet, I guess too. The decisions we make, it's easy to forget. They're made by people, right? We make these decisions. You elect us, and we are your representatives, and we try to do the very best we can. But we don't make decisions. Decisions aren't made by Linda's Magic 8 Ball or anything like that. I mean, real living people make the decisions, and we build on the structure that they've left behind us. And we're standing on the shoulders of giants, frankly, in a lot of cases. I got the sad news today that former District 3 County Commissioner Warren Wooliver had passed away. And do you know Warren? Yep. Warren was 100 years and 3 weeks old. Yeah, I know. And he was county commissioner in this district. He lived his entire life here west of Loveland from 1960 to 1976. 4-term commissioner. Very well loved, very, very integrated into the community. Warren's grandfather, Warren's 100 years old. His grandfather was among the first settlers to come here in a covered wagon, and they settled a farm west of what's now Loveland. And he was he and Fern are wonderful folks. Fern's still alive. She's 99, I think, right, Dan? And they were both living in Good Samaritan together, I think, at the time of his death.
I remember.
But anyway, Warren Warren, for instance, hired the very first employee of our county health department. I mean, he did. A lot of really amazing stuff. And actually, I've had the fortune in the last decade that I've served in this office. The one thing that was so amazing about the county was that we had so many people that had worked here for 30 or 40 years. Right? I mean, it's unbelievable how many people have really given their careers to public service here in the county, and so many of them were hired by Warren Wooliver and the Board of County Commissioners at that time. So we really owe him a real debt of gratitude. He's a wonderful guy, and he and Fern, I think, had just celebrated their 80th wedding anniversary right before he passed, and so they're really a great family and wonderful folks. But kind of sad that Warren's left us. And I haven't spent time with him for a few years, but last time I saw him, he's great. He was sharp as could be, just wonderful to hang around with, So anyway, that's a bit of sad news. Okay, we want to take your questions. And I know some people were typing. I think they're going to make statements, and I guess that's okay. John actually said you could. I heard him say it earlier, so I'm going to hold him to it. But we'd like to be mindful of time, and we have 20 minutes left. And so if anyone would like to ask a question, are we going to try to use the mic?
I
if you want to do that. If not, if you don't, just raise your hand. I'll bring a mic to you. So who'd like to start?
It's easier for the camera if we have people up above.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments? I can talk more if you want. You want something, Marta? You want to say something? No?
No, I did. Girls later.
Here you go.
Yeah, Olivia.
Do you want to stand up? Why don't you stand up and look at one of the cameras and they can put you on. Here, take this. Well, you don't have to. What are you doing? This lady's running for office. I don't know. There she is. Okay, go ahead.
I have so many questions.
Oh, gosh.
I know. I don't expect you to answer
John has so
them
many
all.
answers.
So this is actually a huge education for me. I really wasn't sure what county commissioners did exactly.
And what are you going to tell people we do?
So many things.
Drink coffee and talk, tell jokes.
So I do think a train is going to be incredibly important. We all know that you can't build your way out of congestion. It just doesn't work ever. And northern Colorado is going to do nothing but grow, grow, grow. So it would be nice if people would at least consider a train. They considered it in 1917.
It's
So-
actually, for everyone's benefit, it's actually part of the North I-25 EIS. We had to do a planning document with the federal government that actually developed how the corridor is going to look, and the train's actually part of it.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I
the
hope so.
train's part of it. 4 lanes on
Sweet.
I-25 and a train is the ultimate build out.
Great.
Okay.
And then I also didn't know that county commissioners had anything to do with judges and courts and, correct me if I'm wrong, relieving a judge's docket, let's say, like if there's, the courts are just getting filled, so then you need more room, et cetera, you guys oversee that?
The judiciary are state employees, but the counties are charged with providing the space for them. We do the same with state probation. The probation officers are all state employees, not employed by us, but we are charged with providing them with office space. So it's an interesting relationship. And county government actually is a subdivision of state government. We're the oldest form of government, and Marta knows this because she took our Larimer 101 class. County government is actually the oldest form of government in the United States, right? And so if you would have gone to medieval Europe, there would have been a king, right? And the king ruled a country, and so it was too big for him to administer by himself, and so he broke it into smaller subdivisions, and he appointed an overseer, and his overseer was called a count. And so the area that the count oversaw was called a county. And so we brought that idea of government to this country. We've got rid of the king, but we kept the county. And so, we are a subdivision of state government and provide a lot of those services.
Tom, would you expand a little bit on Larimer County 101 and when the next class will start?
Do you want to do that, Michelle? When is it? Well, let me see.
Well, my question
hurry
about
up.
the courts was...
Hurry up. I got to talk. We're running out of time.
So if a judge's docket is being filled by ridiculous things,
Mm-hmm.
who is it that would say, oh my gosh, why is this happening? We need to fix that.
Probably the state legislature, most likely.
The state legislature.
Most likely. I mean, we don't make the laws about what's legal
Right.
and illegal, right?
So if a
Criminal
resource
penalties.
officer at a school is writing 150 tickets a day,
Yes.
and then those kids have to go to court
I
because
had one
they
of
got
those.
a ticket.
I have one of those kids. I
Yeah.
have one. I had to hire. No, I'm not kidding. She's right. I don't agree with anything else she said, but I agree with her on this. My kid got a ticket. I had to hire an attorney for a $90 ticket. Nobody else is going to pay an attorney to get out of a $90 ticket, right? Because an attorney costs more than the ticket.
Right,
they're
but
doing
for
that,
a resource officer
and they're doing that to all kinds
write
of.
100 tickets before noon.
We're
That's
not a low-income
insane.
family, but a lot of those kids are low-income families, and they're just
For
paying. They're paying
infractions
those
that are
stupid tickets.
ridiculous.
I know. I agree with you.
So
it's not
Go
a county
to the
issue.
courts
but
at 1:30 in the afternoon and see who's sitting there.
I know. Agree. For what? Amen. You're preaching to the choir, lady. Okay. So talk about Larimer 101 for just a minute.
Really quickly. So I know a lot of you in this room have actually taken Larimer County 101.
Speak to that too afterwards.
Everyone raise their hand.
But listen to
We
this
offer a
101 you might
class
be interested
in the springtime. We call it Larimer County 101. It's 10 weeks. You dedicate about 3 hours a Thursday for 10 weeks straight. Bless your hearts for hanging out with me that much. We start taking applications typically towards the beginning of the year, I think maybe February 1st. And we'll take applications through February, and then we start at the end of March. And it's a very good time had by all.
Yeah. So if you.
Do you have a program for like college or high school kids too?
Yeah. We do have that.
So
we
we,
have had
we
that.
had a class called Lien County Academy. It actually got integrated into some CSU curriculum. So senior political science students now take a capstone that integrated our Larimer County Academy into their curriculum. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because so Larimer County, what she's saying is Larimer County developed a program for young people to learn about county government that was so good that CSU actually took it on and made it a 4-credit class. And so it's high quality stuff. And you can get I don't know, maybe you're college students, you look good for college age kids. I'm not saying that you don't. But if you want to get that very same program, you can go through our Larimer 101 program. And it's good, right, Marta?
It's excellent.
It's really good. And if you want to learn really what the county does, it's, how many weeks is it?
10 weeks.
10 weeks, 1 night a week, about 3 hours a night? Is that, so it's, so 30, and we'll feed you dinner. And we'll feed you dinner, and it has no cost. It's free to you, but you got to come, and you got to participate. But it's really, really great because you'll learn all about what the county does. And I'll give you just a preview. The big 3 things the counties do are, why don't you come to the microphone, Malloy? Yeah, for you there will be a test. Absolutely, there will be a test. The big 3 things that county government does, number 1, public health. Everything from restaurant inspections to communicable disease. We do all that stuff. Number 2 is social services, right? All your federal entitlement programs, child protection, those types of services. And the third thing is criminal justice types of things, public safety services. So we operate the county jail. We operate all those alternative to incarceration programs. We fund the district attorney's office and all those things. So those are the big 3 areas of county government. But as you saw, I mean, the clerk and recorder runs elections and does recording and registers motor vehicles and all those other services. We do a myriad of other services as well. So it's a great program, and you would all be well served if you took it. So apply, because we're always looking for geographic diversity, and we don't want it to be filled with only Fort Collins people. They're so snooty. I'm just kidding. They're fine. But we want some Loveland people in it as well. We want people from all over the county to experience it, to go out and be able to know what their county government does. So get involved in that. That's great. Yes, Bruce? Look at the camera, maybe.
No, just look at the commissioners.
Oh, okay. Just look at me. Or come to or be the commissioner. I don't care. I'm sitting down.
I'm Bruce Croissant, resident of Loveland, longtime resident of Fort Collins until I retired. And after I retired, since we're plugging things, I would like to plug Family Leadership Training Institute, which is funded by the Colorado Department of Health and Education. Larimer County is a part of it. CSU Extension is a part of it. It's a community activist training.
Mm-hmm.
From that, I got into the city of Loveland. I became a Transportation Advisory Board member, and I'm now on affordable housing. But while I was in transportation, I was very much a rail fan. But as I got to think about it, rails are very expensive, and rails don't move easily. And until you have a large population, thus meaning a large tax base to afford rail, a much better way to do it is to move gradually into it using bus, like Bustang, which can be moved.
Super.
So that's my opinion.
Great. Well, thanks for your opinion. There's no question? No. Okay, good. Well, good. Great. Well, and so to Bruce's point, and I don't want to belabor this. I know there's a lot of public opinion on both sides. If they would have built a commuter rail line from northern Colorado to Denver 30 years ago, it would have gone to the Cinderella City Mall, which was the largest mall west of the Mississippi River, and it would have gone to Stapleton Airport, which obviously is not there anymore either. And so Bruce is right. I mean, preserving right-of-way and moving rail it's a challenge. So I'm not anti-transit, but I do think that rail does have its own unique problems. Frankly, it's 19th century technology, and we probably can do things differently. But everyone's free to their own opinion. And we don't really want to argue that. But I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it that wants to later. Anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am. Is Michelle going over there? Hi.
Hi, my name is Karen Coppinger, and I live up at Bonner Peak, which is near Livermore.
Yeah, cool.
And we're represent several dozen landowners up there that are sort of concerned about what's happening with the Nisp Glade Reservoir. And my question, we have a billion questions actually, but the question for tonight is, when is the county going to begin a public involvement process, and how can we be involved sort of early and often in that process so that our issues and concerns with that project can be heard and evaluated in a timely manner?
Very good. And so you're going to think I'm playing politician here, and I am. But I'll just tell you, land use applications are kind of a special thing that local government does. When the Board of County Commissioners or City Council or any elected body hears a land use application, they're actually seated as a judge, basically. And so you have a public hearing, sort of like a trial. You have two sides come in. You have an applicant that makes a proposal. You have perhaps neighbors who are concerned or opponents, things like that. And so in order to maintain the impartiality of that, we don't take public comment and we don't discuss pending land use applications outside of the hearing. I know that's hard for people to understand. Think of it this way. If you and I are going to court because I stole your golf clubs, you don't want me playing golf with the judge the weekend before our trial, right? And so we try to make sure that we have a really fair and honest process. And so it's challenging for us to have direct communication about the merits of an application. I think the timeline is fine, but about the actual merits of an application, we probably wouldn't want to talk about that during a meeting like this. You're always welcome to submit comments, and your neighborhood has actually, via email, and we include those in the public record, right? So both sides get to see all the public comments, and so it's very appropriate to send emails at any time, but to talk about it, probably not. And Matt Lafferty is our principal planner at Larimer County, and Matt might be able to talk about the timeline for our public process. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Donnelly. The last I heard is that the methodology or the process by which we were going to process through, there was a intergovernmental agreement, an MOU that was going to be processed for that approval process, has changed, and they're going to follow the standard 1041 procedures for that. And so expectations are that in early part of next year, preferably in January, maybe early February, we'll be doing some public outreach to try to, with NISP, with the Northern Colorado, to try to get contact with the neighbors, have that open contact with them, and then move into a public hearing process after that.
Yeah.
And so you can count on that probably January, February.
Yeah, just like a lot of applications, there's going to be there'll be some open houses or some types of public input engagement sessions. Then there's going to be a full public hearing process. There's going to be planning commission hearings. There's going to be Board of County Commissioner hearings. I think Jeff might be the chairman of our planning commission, or maybe he was the chair. And so there'll be hearings in front of that body and in front of the Board of County Commissioners. And so we'll take it on very soon, starting up. March.
Is that what it was?
Okay. Here, I think, Becky, do you have a question? Okay, here you go.
Can you give us an update on the County Road 17 construction between Loveland and Berthoud?
Linda can do that. No? So County Road 17, I want to tell you a little bit, and this is my other plug for the evening. We actually had the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is kind of the lead planning agency for transportation infrastructure and for air quality in kind of this urbanized area, Larimer and Weld County, where most of the people live here. And we had them look at and evaluate 6 roadways in Larimer County and look at them now and look at them in 2045. And those roadways were I-25, State Highway 402, which is here on the south side of Loveland, U.S. Highway 34, the north side of Loveland, Highway 287, which runs in between Loveland and Fort Collins and all the way south, Highway 14, which is Mulberry in Fort Collins, or on the north end of Fort Collins, and the final one was County Road 17, which in Loveland we call Taft, and in Fort Collins they call Shields, and in Berthoud they call it Berthoud Parkway. And so Shaft, or County Road 17. We looked at those 6 roadways, and so County Road 17 is one segment of that. By 2045, if nothing is done, the amount of time you will spend on those 6 corridors waiting in traffic will increase by 670%. It's, unbelievable. None of us will want to live here anymore if that's the case. It's a significant challenge. It's going to really impact our quality of life here. It's going to impact our economy more than almost anything else. I tell people all the time, your kid's school teacher now lives in Milliken, or she lives in Evans, and she drives here to teach your kids. And she's a great teacher, right? So guess what happens when the Greeley District 6 gets a job opening? I mean, she can commute an hour and a half less every day, and she takes that job. And so it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that she doesn't love her job here. It's just she wants to spend time with her family too. That's the battle for the future, in my opinion.
And isn't it correct, Tom, that had 1A been successful, and we accept the decision of the voters,
absolutely,
but that's an example of in the top 6 priority transportation project, that would have been addressed with the money from 1A.
Yeah, I went to a meeting with the, and I'll get to your question. I actually will get to your question eventually. I went to a meeting, Miles was there, with we had a joint meeting with the mayor of Windsor, Christy Melendez, and she and I had a meeting. And people were talking about traffic on Highway 392, which is like Main Street in Windsor. And the Windsor Public Works Director said, you know, the problem, I'd love to expand this roadway, but I can't build the bridge over the Poudre River. I can't afford to expand it. That was actually Windsor's project on our regional transportation list, was to actually expand that bridge, which would have allowed for that roadway to be expanded to take on some of that extra traffic. And so, unfortunately, that didn't happen. I think we're going to have to get very serious about that. And I know, I know transportation. Everyone knows and recognizes the importance of transportation, but of course, there's so many other things, right? I mean, you have kids. You want to make sure your schools are adequately funded. There's all these different things, and so the transportation needs certainly a greater regional look, but also needs more of a significant statewide look. Now, on your question, so Larimer 1A was unsuccessful. Our funding proposal that we brought to the voters to fund regional significant transportation projects was unsuccessful. We've been working incrementally on some of those projects, though. And one that we actually partnered with the town of Berthoud, Larimer County and Berthoud actually partnered together at the MPO to make an application for some of our federal funding, our gas tax dollars that are returned. We send it to Washington. They take a cut off the top and send us back like 80%. They're great guys. We love them. And so we take some of that money, and actually we have a competitive process at the MPO. We look at the very most significant, important projects. We have very limited money. Want to make sure that the money counts, right? And so we look at the most significant projects, and that was one. And so I think it's funded for next year. We do like a 4-year call because we get a little bit of money every year, and so we program all that money out for like 4 years at a time. And so I think that project's coming next year. I think we're successfully getting that money in place next year, and so it'll be good. One more question? Is that all, Michelle? Yeah. Here.
Stand up? Or
yeah, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah, stand up.
Not really a question per se, but just a comment about growth here in the area. I like what you guys have been doing in terms of working on transportation issues around the county here, and now you guys are starting to go ahead and work on affordable housing. And I really hope that with this next year and the next decade, the county is able to focus in on that, because we all know more people are coming to this great area here, and obviously, you know, talking about all the commute times and traffic that's starting to increase, and as being probably one of the only millennials in the room here.
Oh, Michelle.
One of two. Just affordable housing, that is a real concern with my generation here. Funny thing happened the other day. I was with a friend. We were at a birthday party. We're all asking, okay, which one of us do you think will be able to go ahead and truly afford a single-family house by the time we're 40? We're all in our early 30s. And none of us were quite sure if that's going to happen. And it does feel like this area, it's a great area, but it does seem like people are getting priced out, and with more businesses coming in here that are providing some jobs but not truly affordable wages here, I think that's going to be an issue. So anything you guys can do to truly help out with the transportation issues around the area and affordable housing. Because I'd love to continue to be here. I'm a Colorado native, born up in Poudre, lived here in Loveland, went to Loveland High School.
Yeah.
But if in a few years just get priced out, I'm going to have to move, and I really would not like to do that.
Very good. Yeah, well said. And we're going to make fun of you millennials after you leave, both of you. No, but that's true. And that challenge is only going to get more significant, right? Because
Thank you, Troy.
John talked about this. The cost is land and the cost is water. And frankly, it's a function of supply and demand. We don't have very much land and we don't have very much water. We live in the arid West. And so that's a real challenge for us. That is going to be a real challenge for us in the future, and that's going to be how we address that's going to be significant. And obviously, we can't do that alone. We're going to have to work with the municipalities. One part of that is obviously some things you can do with density to try to bring down the cost of housing and bring down the cost of water. There's a lot of things that we could potentially do with zoning regulations that could allow a little bit of development in the county. Right now, it's very, very difficult to do any type. Well, I mean, I have folks who came to this meeting specifically because they've had challenges not on land development, but challenges working with the county's planning department and building department. Right? Talked to me during the break, and so there's things that we could do from a regulatory framework that could help that out and maybe try to encourage some different types of land uses and things like that. And we're certainly committed to looking at that. That's a great question. And so that's all we have time for. Matt, did you want?
One statement?
Oh, I suppose. You have to use a mic.
Because it's relevant to what you just said. As Commissioner Kavalas pointed out early on, and Jeff Jensen, Commissioner from the Planning Commission, we're in the process of updating the land use code, and they talked about the draft assessment. I'll be posting the draft assessment on the webpage tomorrow at larimer.org under the planning page. You'll find a tab called Land Use or LUC 2020. Feel free to go out and read that document. It outlines the major themes that we're going to be working on for the next year and a half, and gives a pathway for how we're going to accomplish that. On the 4th, we will, from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock at the county courthouse offices in Fort Collins, we will have an open house. So you're welcome to come up, hear our presentation, ask questions, and we can talk about how you feel about that. If you want to stick around and watch the Planning Commission in action, they'll be doing the same thing that evening. And so I invite you to participate in that process. It's going to be a year process to get through phase 1. Phase 2 will take us about a year and a half, and it will cover a wide variety of topics ranging from zoning all the way down to specific land use types, agriculture, things like that. So it's a good way to get engaged in your local
Very good.
Situation.
Thank you, Matt. And so the date.
December 4th.
December 4th. That's when we're starting.
December 4th.
We're kind of kicking off this rewrite of the land use code. It's been over 20 years since we've changed our land use code in a significant way, and so it's time. And so we're kicking that off right now. Closing comments, Commissioner.
So thank you, Tom. In closing, 2 thoughts. One is this open house, town hall style meeting where typically all 3 of us are present, all 3 commissioners. We started this, or maybe we revisited it. Versions of it may have been done in the past, but we started doing it this year. And so we're going to evaluate how effective it has been, as a way of connecting with folks. So once again, if you have input on is this format, is it useful, in terms of learning more about the county, in terms of holding us accountable, and so please, contact the commissioners. What is it, BOCC at Larimer, and if you have ideas on how to make this more effective, or is this a waste of time, that would be very helpful.
Well, don't say that. Please,
well,
you lie to us.
I don't think it's a waste of time in one way or the other. We all do different things, whether it's mayors, like Commissioner Donnelly meets with local elected officials, and he has his meetings. I have my community conversations. Commissioner Johnson likes to hang out at the Stakeout Saloon.
Meatloaf Monday.
Meatloaf Monday. So if you're vegetarian, you're a little bit... But I just wanted you to know that, please, we welcome your input on this format, and is it a good idea? How well is it working? How can we make it better? And the second thought is just to say thank you, much gratitude for taking the time to be here this evening. However you might celebrate next week, with Thanksgiving, whatever your traditions are, the fact that we're here, we have the privilege to be here, I think there's a lot of reason to have, to count our blessings. So I want to say thank you for being here. Thanks to county staff, and thanks to the folks who got us on television, the Fort Collins TV folks. It's a team effort.
Great job, you guys. Yeah, Justine has edited a lot of questionable comments from me out of the public record over the years,
great.
so I owe her a lot.
That's right.
I owe her a steak dinner. I actually grew up in rural Kansas, northeastern Kansas. I spent my boyhood there. I've lived here about half my life. The half of my life where I got to choose where I would live, I've lived here with you. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm happy with that decision. I had the happy occasion to get to go home about 3 years ago. It was my aunt's 100th birthday, and I got to go spend it with. She's great. Her mind is sharper than John's, and she was great to be around. I love her so much, and she's still living even to this day. She actually, just as an aside, she went down and renewed her driver's license on the day of her birthday because her license was going to expire. I'm not sure that was a good idea, but anyway, it happened. When I was back there, it was interesting. There were signs up on a lot of the people's properties. They wanted to save the Potawatomi County Courthouse. That's where I grew up, in Potawatomi County, Kansas. It's a probably 130-year-old limestone facility, old building. It's beautiful, but probably not really very workable for our modern times. But I sat there and I thought about it. I said, it's really a testament to the role that counties play in our lives, right? It's such a tie to our sense of community and really our development as a civilization and as a society. And so county government's really important. So the fact that you chose to engage with us today means a lot to us. We know how important our work is. We take very seriously our obligations as your representatives. I hope you know that. I joke a lot, but I want you to know how serious I take this job and this role that I serve. There were many things you could have done with your evening tonight. The fact that you chose to spend it with us really does mean the world to us. So thanks everyone for coming out. It was great to spend some time with you tonight, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks everyone. Okay.